going to be covering an introduction to the nervous system. The nervous system includes all the neural tissue in the body. Its components include the brain, the spinal cord, sense organs such as the eye, the ear, taste on the tongue, and the nerves that interconnect those organs and link them with other nervous systems in the body. So all of this is considered the nervous system. The nervous system converts sensory information at the extremities or from our special sensory organs into electrical impulses that our brain can then interpret, and we can therefore respond. So when we see something, if we're walking towards something, we see it, our brain interprets the fact that there's something we're walking towards, and then it can send a signal out to the muscular portions of the body, which allow us to move out of the way of the thing that we're about to walk into. So the nervous system's purpose is to interpret electrical impulses from sensory systems and then respond appropriately to that stimuli. The basic structural unit of the nervous system are neurons. These are specialized cells that are able to send electrical impulses away from and towards the central nervous system. They conduct impulses and release specific chemical regulators. We'll talk about a few of those, particularly the ones that I'm going to ask you to remember are acetylcholine and norepinephrine. Okay, so our functions of the nervous system. To interpret sensory information from the internal and external environment. So things that we see, things that we hear, things that we feel, things like temperature. Those are all things that our nervous system are developed to help us understand what is happening. Then we're going to integrate that information most of the time in the central nervous system. And then that actually can depend on current and past experiences. For example, if you have ever put your hand on a hot stove, then your body develops learning and memory from that experience, and you know to remove your hand quickly. Pain is a very good teacher, but so is emotional joy and happiness and emotional pain. Lots of current and past experiences help us assimilate and understand input. And then further, to be able to respond to that input through motor function, so to have organized and coordinated motor output. In some instances, this will be voluntary or involuntary. So in the somatic nervous system, we'll talk about how that is a voluntary response, but in the autonomic nervous system, we'll talk about how that is actually an involuntary response. Okay, so coming on down here. So this is an important point. We only have one nervous system in our body. The nervous system is going to encapsulate every portion of our nervous system from head to toe. Every neuron, every post and preganglionic synapse, every portion of the nervous system, there is only one. But we can divide the nervous system anatomically based on structure or functionally. So one more time, we can divide our one nervous system based on structural or anatomic characteristics or functional characteristics. So structurally, we can divide the nervous system into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is going to be our brain and our spinal cord. That's it. This does not include cranial nerves. It does not include preganglionic fibers. The central nervous system is only made up of the brain and the spinal cord. Brain is in the cranial cavity. It's where most of our information is going to be integrated and sorted out. And then the spinal cord is protected in the vertebral foramen, which we talked about as part of the skeletal unit. The peripheral nervous system, so coming up here, the peripheral nervous system is then structurally divided into 12 pairs of cranial nerves, which hopefully you saw those in lab. Our 12 types of cranial nerves are going to be things like the olfactory nerve and the optic nerve, oculomotor nerve, etc. And then additionally, we're going to have at each vertebral level and one extra between the occiput and the atlas, we're going to have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So 8 cervical because we have the one extra, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral for the 5 sacral foramina, and then 1 coccygeal at the coccyx. So this constitutes structurally our peripheral nervous system. Functionally, though, so coming back up here, we just divided the nervous system anatomically and structurally. Now we're going to divide it functionally. So I'll come back down here. Functionally, the nervous system can be divided into the somatic nervous system, which is essentially like our voluntary response. So, moving our muscles, moving our eyes, etc. This is going to be like a somatic nervous system. We have an autonomic nervous system, which is generally thought of as involuntary. So this is going to be further divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions, and we'll talk more about that in some detail. And then finally, the enteric nervous system. This is the final functional classification. We in this class will not talk much about the enteric nervous system, but this is here rather just so that you can appreciate it and consider it and know that it's there. It was once considered part of the autonomic nervous system because it goes to the gut, it goes to the gastrointestinal tract. However, in recent years, it just has such a unique and complex structure and function that it has been spliced out away from this autonomic nervous system to become its own system as we digest food and as we recognize gastric juices, etc. That'll all be part of the enteric nervous system. But the two functional classifications that we will focus on mainly in class is going to be the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So in the somatic nervous system, we're going to have afferent and efferent neurons. If you'll remember, afferent, so ferent right here means to carry. Afferent means towards, and F means away from. So afferent impulses convey information to the central nervous system. Efferent neurons conduct impulses away from the central nervous system. These afferent impulses will come from special sensory receptors, primarily in the muscle, joints, and skin. So, for example, muscle spindles or Golgi tendon organs, how much a muscle is stretched or how fast we're moving a joint, touch, pressure, proprioceptors, position and movement of skeletal muscle joints. Those are going to be afferent neurons, information that is carried to the CNS, which is then integrated, and then we will send out a signal efferently to respond to that sensory information. So the effector organs of the efferent nervous system tend to be our skeletal muscles and our glands. Activities here may be voluntary or involuntary depending, we have our reflexes. So for example, we raise our hand, or I already mentioned this, jerking our hand away from a heat source as a reflex. We'll demonstrate one of these in class with the patellar or the Achilles tendon reflex. One final slide here just to kind of bring this somatic nervous system into a little bit more of a complete picture here. So we've got our key here, input and output. So here we have our afferent impulses from the skin. Maybe there's someone touching you or pressure or pain or whatever it is. Those afferent impulses will travel down the afferent nerve past these. We'll talk more about these structures in a little bit. It'll go past this posterior root ganglion into the spinal cord. It likely travels up into the brain, up the spinal cord, where that information is integrated, and then we will send an impulse back down and send it out efferently, output efferently along the motor neuron. Cell body's going to be up here in the spinal cord. efferently to a skeletal muscle or a gland. So this kind of encapsulates what we were just talking about here with our efferent and afferent somatic nervous system, which is a functional division of the nervous system. And that finishes this video on the introduction to the nervous system.